Welcome to another session. I hope you are well. Today I'm going to be speaking about something that I think affects and applies to each and every one of us, sometimes directly and sometimes indirectly. I have two videos to play, fair use, but I want to use these two videos as a teaching lesson to set the premise for today's session. Let's first of all take a look at the first video and then the second video. And one of the things you would notice from both videos is how there is a consistency between both. Let's take a look.
Okay, we have Linnell's wish list for men. We're going to scroll through it all, and I'll try to read along. Here, we're going to scroll along. My ideal man is African-American, dark complexion, 6'2", athletic body, 230 pounds, average dark eyes, straight, white teeth, all 32. God-fearing, spiritual attends, millionaire, generous, family-oriented as a family, sports spectator, not his friends, stand together, dedicated to loving me, determined to make our love more, and sincere and genuine, nice, honest, trustworthy, faithful, dependable, mature, understands, chivalry, practices, adventurous, will try anything, sexually compatible, can dance or willing to learn various types of music, wants to be married, loves something, faithful, can communicate well, good listener, romantic, clean and tidy, well-dressed, nice shoes, wants children, at least two, spontaneous, healthy, likes to cook, and what is the last one?
Drug-free.
Drug-free, drinks alcohol occasionally or not at all.
Yeah, that would be the Lord. Yeah. Good luck.
Right, right. His name is Jesus.
And I'll be trying to meet him the same time you do.
Oh, my God. Okay. Yinka, tell Steve what numbers 28 and 36 are on your list.
Can and willing to cook and clean, neat or at least keeps things tidy, and 36 can bring me to orgasm through intercourse and orally.
Let's deal with the cooking and cleaning first. That's great on your list, but now suppose his idea of cooking and cleaning is his mother. His mother can make every dish known to man. Your specialty is romaine noodles. You're gonna have a problem there. You know, his idea of clean the way his mom cleaned, and your idea of clean could be something. So you may not even be a match for him. And if you want a man that can bring you to orgasm both ways, all the time, my question to you is, can you do that? And see, he may want it just like that all the time and anytime he wants it. So, you know, are you willing to be the same thing to him that you're talking about on that list? And a lot of women are not. You want a billionaire. Okay, you know what billionaires looking for?
She said million. She's looking for million.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. She's looking for a million.
Well, that fixes it up. That's a lot. That opens the gate wide open now. Yeah. Heather bought me her list of requirements, so let's check them out. He must be between 30 and 45, financially stable, no kids, 5'10" or taller, no hookups or flings, ready to settle down, no roommates, no smoking, must love dessert, and can't be anti-sugar. What's the deal with the desserts?
Well, okay, that's a really important one because I'm the founder and CEO of my own frosting company. And so it's an all-natural gourmet frosting, and so I make a lot of desserts. Okay. And I do a lot of, trade shows and making desserts. Right. So he has to like dessert. If he doesn't like dessert, it's totally a deal breaker.
Right, totally a deal breaker.
Totally a deal breaker.
Okay, but there's some more requirements, so let's take a look at these. Must be honest, reliable, sweet and kind, quick-witted, romantic, must love food, must pay on the first date, no flowers on the first date, must be a social drinker, and must never wear sweatpants. What?
Those are basics.
Why he can't wear sweatpants?
No, the last guy I dated, we fought all the time because he wanted to go to Starbucks in sweatpants and go to breakfast in sweatpants, and no one should be doing that.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, well, we got some more requirements, but we don't have no more room. Guys, let me get one of the pillars over here. Okay. All right, here we go. Let's see. Must be adventurous, must be humble, must be spontaneous, must be a planner, can't be self-centered, can't be cocky, must love dogs, can't own a dog from a breeder, can't be jealous of her dog, and can't own a cat. The hell, what? You can't have a dog from a breeder?
Yeah, I mean, listen, Steve, there's so many dogs out there that are in need of homes, that are shelter dogs, and they're really sweet, great dogs. So any guy that's going to spend a ton of money to buy a purebred dog, it just says something about his character. I don't like
Yeah,
that.
he wants a dog?
But he can adopt.
Okay. Okay, he can't be jealous of your dog?
So the last guy I dated, he admitted after a few months that he was jealous of my dog, and he was kind of mean to my dog in the beginning. And he said that I gave my dog more attention than I gave to him.
Did you?
Well, I mean, my dog never fought with me.
That's because your dog ain't got to live up to all them damn requirements. Your dog probably go to hell. Woo! Man, damn, glad I'm a dog. We're not done yet. We can get another pillar. In fact, yeah. Let's bring all of them in here. Bring both of them over. I love it. You ready? Must be in shape. Can't have six-pack abs. Can't have six-pack abs. Can't be too skinny, can't have a runner's physique, can't be stronger than me, can't be obsessed with sports, can't be a hunter, can't own a boat, can't be a gamer, can't be materialistic. I'm out.
That would be out.
Can't be materialistic. What does that mean? He can't want anything?
He can't want to buy things all the time.
Can you talk to my wife?
Probably.
Okay, let's keep going. Must respect a gluten-free diet. Can't be too close to family and friends. Must open doors for me. Must be willing to move someplace warm. Must love traveling. Can't brag about traveling. Oh, we can go there, but you can't tell nobody. You shut your mouth. What you telling everybody we was in Arizona for? Must maintain eye contact. Can't be a party boy. Can't be intimidated by me. Favorite season what? Favorite season cannot be fall. There's more, we ran out of pillars. He can't love fall?
So the thing about that is that every guy I've gone out with that says their favorite season is fall they're so typical. Everyone's favorite season is fall. And so then they want to go pumpkin picking and apple picking and to haunted houses and it's just like it's watching the same movie and knowing the ending every single time.
Do you like quiet time?
I do.
You're gonna have a lot of it. Heather.
Yeah.
You're young, you're smart. This is a lot, man.
Yes.
You gotta go. See, if you're looking for a guy with all of that,
Yeah.
I don't know that he exists.
No. He's got to exist. You don't
Okay.
think so?
Well, let me ask you something. Been 8 years.
I've dated a lot since then.
Right, okay, so let me ask you. You got another 8 you wanna do just like?
No.
Yeah.
No, I don't.
Okay, then do you understand what I'm getting at? I'm just trying to help you, Heather.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Because I just looked over there and I forgot I must maintain eye contact.
me start by saying as follows. Let me make it very, very clear. My intention in today's session is not to attack, to question, to judge any of the women in the videos by way of what they say they want. Every one of us is entitled to our preferences. We all have standards. I have nothing against you having standards. I have nothing against people having whatever they choose as prerequisites to their love and to interacting with them. Everybody gets to choose. What I intend to do in today's session is connect a concept that I had started 2 sessions ago and I had covered in the prior session. And I want to connect those concepts in a manner that perhaps you might understand. I used both videos to demonstrate one thing. That when we look at women, modern women in the West particularly, a lot of the issues that I raise and I talk about in my videos is not an issue relating to one particular group. In the first video, you saw 3 women. In the second video, you saw 1 woman. But there was a consistency across all women. That consistency is a simple one. It's the fact that most modern women have very, 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 very high, sometimes, and most times, unrealistic dating standards, unrealistic relationship standards, and unrealistic preferences and demands which they bring to the table in the marketplace for relationships or sex. Now let me start today's session in more detail and focus by addressing a number of things. I'd like you to remember 3 words as we go through today's explanation. The first word is price. The second word is value. The third is worth. The price is price is what you pay, value is what you get. Your worth is effectively what you're intrinsically worth in the marketplace. A sale takes place between a buyer and a seller in a natural setting of a market when there is an understanding of the supply-demand relationship, and when both parties believe and feel that there is a value exchange that is fair. So for example, if I took you to a local supermarket and you walked into the supermarket and you walked up to one of the aisles and you were going to buy some, let's say, free-range eggs, and there was just 1 left, whatever label or price is stated next to that item is what you have to pay. There is no negotiation, there is no demand that exceeds what is available in that particular store, by virtue of the fact that the company owns the rights to sell in that store. If I were to take you, on the other hand, to an open marketplace, and there were so many people there who were selling free-range eggs, and there was so much demand, and for some reason there were fewer buyers, what you might find is one person might price their eggs at £2.50 for half a dozen, and another person priced theirs at £3.20 for half a dozen. If there is no movement in price at 7 p.m. a.m. in the morning, as we approach 4 p.m. in the evening, what you might find is that the sellers start to consider offers. They might suddenly start to mark down their prices because they want to have a sale before they leave. Otherwise, what they may find is that they've traveled all the way and they've expended so much resources and time, and they've made no sale, and now they're taking their inventory back, having expended and also having or being aware that they will expend to return. So you might find someone says, well, I'll just mark 15% off because I want to sell these eggs. Someone might come up and say, listen, I'll take a dozen, but I want 20% off. At the start of the day, if I walked up and I offered the seller 20% off as a minimum for my sale, or in exchange of my cash, they might laugh me off. Why? The market has just begun at 7 p.m. At midday, the seller might be reluctant. He might say, well, I'll give you 10%. But as we approach 4 p.m., assuming that the store closes or all the stores have to be shut at 4:30, suddenly there's a change. You might find that you have a motivated seller because of the restriction placed by time. Now, that example is something you understand. It's something I understand. When I bring this into the relationship marketplace and intersexual dynamics, we struggle with the same concept. 2 sessions ago, I started by explaining that a woman has to understand the price she's asking for, but she has to juxtapose her price with her value. The value is not determined by the woman, but from a man's perspective. In other words, if you are a woman, the question is not what you rank yourself or rate yourself or what you believe your value is in that marketplace. The key part to understand is that men are the ones, assuming a heterosexual pair, men are the ones who consume a woman's beauty, a woman's time and presence, a woman's affection, and a woman's, you might say, partnership over a long period of time. We get to choose. So the key question is not necessarily what the woman thinks about herself. The most important fundamental question is, what do men think? But even more importantly is, the men that she wants and the men she honors, desires, and values, if she could identify those men, what would those men, those particular men, also want? There are a few billion people in the world. Most women do not care about the opinions of every single man. Women care more about a select group of men. And the key question is, if she was able to identify those men, and if those men were able to meet her price, what do those men want in exchange for what she's offering? Because that's when you have a value exchange. Price is what you pay, value is what you get, your worth is what the market determines. But here is the key part. There's always something called the cost. Now, we go back to the videos you just saw. I find it fascinating. Again, no criticism as to what they have asked for, but what you find is, as you go through the list, there are costs associated with what I call capital expenditure. In other words, for me to meet those standards, in addition to paying that price to be with her, I have to have paid, or will be paying, some extra price as an initial cost outlay. But there's also maintenance cost. So what most men think, and the way we calculate matters, we know cost-benefit calculators, we don't think purely based on what's the price. We ask what's the purchase cost. That purchase cost would include the price, but also whatever initial cost outlay and any ongoing costs. In other words, the cost of being in a relationship with you. That's the key thing. So you might find women who, generally speaking, their prices are not high, but the cost of being in a relationship with them, such as what you saw on those lists, means that the overall purchase cost is too dear compared to the value exchange, to what we get. Now, I'm going to move to the second point of what I hope to talk about today. I'll put that in the form of a question. If you are a woman, a simple question to you is your price too high? Are you pricing yourself out of the market? And the reason I say that is that I hope, I was amused when I saw those lists. But there is almost a sadness that comes into my heart, because it almost feels that there is a deliberate effort on the woman's part, or on those women's parts, to price themselves out of the market, and by so doing, self-sabotage the possibility of happiness and being in a relationship. Now, I'm not saying I'm correct in my thought process, but you have to stop and ask the simple question. Are these women looking to be in a fulfilling emotionally significant, long-lasting relationship? Because if the answer is yes, one has to ask another follow-up question. Why would you put hurdles across the board to stop potential suitors from actually approaching you? And it doesn't seem as though these are small hurdles, these are huge hurdles. Only a select group of men can meet all of their standards. Now, in the session I did yesterday, I made it clear that most women desire only about 10 to 15% of men based on their price and based on their standards. Only about 10% of men, up to 15, will qualify for about 85% of the lists women have. If you aggregate the women across 100%, less than 10% of men will meet the list requirements, the dating standards, or the preferential standards of most women. What this means is that you create something similar to the 80-20 rule, that less than 20% of men are therefore in demand by about 80% of women. So it's quite skewed, which then means that it's fine for a woman to have a price and identify all of her standards and preferences. But by doing so, she eliminates almost 85% of the men who are mostly suitable men. And by eliminating such men, she positions herself in such a manner that she will fail. The reason being, when she has identified that 15% of men or less, recognizing that these men are outstanding based on the fact that they can meet all of the, let's say 80, 90, 95% of all of the requirements that most women have, these men are aware of how valuable they are. And therefore, these are the men who effectively run game on women because they are spoiled with choice. They find it hard to take one candy and leave the store. They keep trying different candies. Why? Women are throwing themselves on these men. And these men are spoiled with choice. But here's the key question, because it's all about outcomes and results. If you ask said men what they also want from a woman, what you find is when these men identify what they want, in most cases, 90% of the women do not qualify for what these men want based on the man's standards. Recognize the woman started the process. She had a long list of what she wanted. She eliminated about 85% of the men. The remaining 15% of the men meet those standards, but recognizing the fact that these men are very, very valuable. When they identify what they want in women, what they want, I hate to say this, most men that I have met and most men that I know will not make a list of items that exceed 5. Half a dozen at most. But a lot of the things that will be identified, you will find are not exorbitant. They're not extraordinary. They're not standards that are self-sabotaging. They're quite simple. In any case, when these men identify what they wish, 85% of these women will not meet that standard, which means, remember, the key point is who started the process. It means that the woman, by identifying her standards, has created an obstacle that is guaranteed to ensure that she does not have a happy, healthy, emotionally significant, long-term relationship with someone she values and a man who is of value. Women are self-sabotaging themselves by choice. That is price. The second part of today's session is then value. What is a woman's value? What is a woman's value as perceived by men in the marketplace? We deviate into two groups, to men in the dating marketplace or to men in the relationship marketplace? Now, to answer that question, we go back to those women in the two clips. I'll make some generalizations. I hope you would agree with my general observations. Number one, these women are modern women. They're not traditional women. They are modern women. Number two, of the women identified, we can say that they are probably 30 years old and above. With those two, statements, we then go into the value conversation. In the sessions that I covered in the prior days, and in the sessions I've done over the many years, I talk about 4 parts to how men generally assess a woman's value. And these are the same way that women will assess a man's value. But what men choose as preferential varies from what women choose as preferential. The first is your sexual marketplace value, SMV. This principally deals with how you look. First thing in the morning, let's say as soon as you've had a shower, assuming you're wearing no makeup, assuming you're wearing no hair extensions, no nails, in your natural state, in your very pure natural state, with no enhancements, what do you look like? Both your face, your body, your symmetry, proportionality, etc. That is your sexual marketplace value. It deals with how attractive you are, your appearance. Now, I'm not talking about how you dress and how you style your hair. I'm talking about who you are naked. Height to weight ratio, height to waist ratio, proportionality, facial symmetry, body symmetry, size of your bust, size of your hips, and all the sequencing that goes through in distinguishing women who are exceptionally good looking and attractive, and women who are average, and women who are below average. The second is your reproductive fertility value, your RFV. This deals with your ability to bring to term a child that is healthy. And we do not define bring to term and healthy at the point of birth. We look at it from a perspective of 20, 25 years, 30 years down the line. The reason being, sometimes it takes a while to know whether the decision was the right decision. Your reproductive fertility value deals with your ability to actually bring a man's seed into the next generation. Not all men want to be fathers. So, generally speaking, this does not apply to every single man in terms of his demands. The third is your non-sexual marketplace value. Now, let me take a step back. The first SMV and the second RFV, there is a heuristic we use. And this is why I explain that in many cases and in many ways, my approach to teaching these issues is not as other men would, because people use heuristics. Age is a heuristic for your sexual marketplace value and your reproductive fertility value. If a woman is 24, generally speaking, she's youthful, and therefore she has what we will call a higher sexual marketplace value compared to if she was 34. If she is 24, all things remaining equal, she has a higher reproductive fertility value than if she was 34. So we use age as a heuristic. Now, this does not mean you can't have women who are 30 or 40 who are very attractive. Yes, you can. But the likelihood of finding a woman who is 40, who has the same reproductive probabilities, not possibility, but probabilities, as a woman who is 20 years her junior, is much lower. So we use age as a heuristic for the first two selection processes, SMV, RFV. The third is your non-sexual marketplace value, NSMV. And this captures a lot of the things that are not sexual or physical or based on appearance or based on reproduction. We're looking at things such as your behavior, your attitude, your mannerism. We look at your femininity, whether your software, effectively is the software installation in you, not the hardware. SMV and RFV deals with the hardware. NSMV deals with the software. It deals with the decorum, etiquettes, whether you were raised to be a wife, whether you were taught properly at the early stages about a woman's role, a woman's function, a woman's power, a woman's strength, a woman's influence. It deals with things such as your character, your value system. But most importantly, this is where we bring in what I started today's session with, which was the women we saw and modern women. It puts you into a category, your NSMV puts you into a category of whether you're traditional or whether you're modern. Both are two separate software installations. So, a woman's behavior and expectations and attitude tells you very much about her non-SMV, your NSMV, ranking or rating. Of the women we saw, when you take the 3 items, you could very easily associate from a man's perspective a ranking. Now, the final 4th item is your EIV, your economic intrinsic value. This has to do with your education, your accomplishments, your intelligence, your finances, your job and your salary, the wealth you have, whether you have actually access to wealth from family, friends, whether you're underwritten from a financial position. That is your EIV, your economic intrinsic value. This deals with your productivity. Men do not care about your EIV, so we put that to the side completely. We do not judge women. I've never met a man who said, well, I met a girl and she studied at Harvard and I'm going to pitch a tent. Or as soon as she told me she was at Harvard, I pitched a tent. It doesn't happen. On the other hand, I've seen men who, when they describe women they find attractive, they use things that are physical, have physical attributes. They talk about her age, they talk about her looks, her hips, her breast size, her lips, her eyes, her hair, things that are physical. So we have 3 criteria that we use as men in identifying a woman's value. Of the women we saw in the 2 clips, all of those women you can associate and you can assign a ranking on a scale of 0 to 10 based on SMV, based on RFV, and also based on NSMV. Now let's deal with the 3 of them very quickly. Whilst I try not to give a score, think about this from a man's perspective. That's the only way you can understand and appreciate the challenge and the complexity of what I am talking about. I'm not asking you to judge the woman from a woman's perspective. I'm saying, what would men who meet her standard, who meet the lists that she identified, who will fall within the top 10% of men, what would those men rate or rank each of those women on the 3 criteria? Now, on the SMV, we can say a few things. If it's based on appearance, each of those women are presented themselves in a public platform. Therefore, we can assume that their natural state will be less than what they presented on the show. We can assume also, therefore, that they use makeup for the purpose of trying to conceal imperfections. Therefore, in their natural state, first thing in the morning, even after a shower, we can assume that what you saw on television or what you saw in those clips is a higher ranking, but when you judge them on the SMV alone, you will get a lower ranking. Let's put that to the side. I stated that each of those women were 30 years and above. Now, I've said before in many sessions, beauty generally lasts about 12 years, and then it starts to decline. 18 to 30, and then it starts to decline very significantly. Now, this does not mean there aren't exceptions to the rule, but generally speaking, men and women, beauty starts to decline significantly from 30 and above, for several reasons. It's biologically a statement of fact. Now, if these women are 30 and above, then we can say with certainty that we wouldn't score any of them in the 9s or the 10s. From an age perspective, which I'm using as a heuristic for their reproductive fertility value. So we can say, for example, that using age as a proxy, if the women are 30 years and above, recognizing that geriatric pregnancy starts at 35, and even if we were to say, well, these women split the difference at 32 each, they are 3 years away from high-risk pregnancy. But Fertility begins at 18, even before 18. But if we start at 18, which is when they are functional adults, 18 to 35 is 18 years. What that simply means is that they only have 3 years left of the 18 years that they were gifted or they were given. Now, what this simply means is from a reproductive fertility value, recognizing that 35 and above is high-risk pregnancy. Your obs-and-gyn, your OBGYN will tell you the risk to you, the mother, increases significantly, and the risk to the baby increases significantly. It doesn't mean you can't have kids post 36, but they would encourage you post 40, be very careful. In any case, we start with the high risk because it means prior to that number, prior to that gate coming down, which nature starts to shut, you're safe. From that gate shutting and over, the risk is on you. 3 years left out of 18. Now, if you divide 3 by 18, what you get is roughly about 16.67%. So, if you invert that, it also means that each of the women have lost about 83% of their peak fertility value at that age. Now, I know there are complications because you can always find exceptions where a woman who is 21 is infertile and a woman who's 42 is fertile. I get that. I'm not dealing with the exceptions. The point being that when you consider the reproductive fertility value of the women in question, you have to say, you have to agree with me that we're not talking about women in the elite range, 9 and 10s. This brings me to the third part of the assessment, NSMV, non-sexual marketplace value. This has to do with things that are not physical and things that are not related to your age. Things that are more connected with how humble you are, how gracious you are, how understanding you are, your character, integrity, feminine spirit. It deals with things like etiquette and how you interact with the world. Whether you're raised to be a wife, whether you have a servant spirit. And what you find is the best way to judge these women, because one of the ways you find out a woman's non-sexual marketplace values through interactions. But there is a heuristic, there is a way of assessing what a woman's non-sexual marketplace value is by listening to what she says, by listening to what comes out of her mouth, by looking at her list. When you go through the list of those women, what you find is you can say with certainty, these are not humble women. Because anyone who's humble and who has grace and who has gratitude will not expect such a list of expectations from another person without making sure that they are also consistent in their sexual marketplace value, in their reproductive fertility value, and in their non-sexual marketplace value. In other words, congruency has to be the watchword. Integrity has to be the standard. If a woman who is a 9 or a 10 in beauty, I mean a classical beauty, 25, 26, 27, who is a model, who men across any geography and any time would say, wow, if she made such a demand, we would say, well, after all, beauty costs, and therefore her lists are consistent with what she brings to the table. She has youth, and even if she's a virgin, youth, chastity, she has time on her hand, and she can pair bond with a man. When we look at these women and we look at their list, we simply come to a conclusion that there is very little humility, very little gratitude. We also can say that actually the installation is actually a modern installation, therefore not as a traditional installation. These women do not have a servant spirit, and therefore whilst they're making such huge demands, these are not wives. They were not trained to be wives, and they do not sound like wives. And therefore, you can come to a conclusion that their non-sexual marketplace value, just based on their character, based on their femininity, based on their interactions and how they present themselves, based on their demands and expectations of life, we can say that with some confidence that they score about average in the non-sexual marketplace value, but also possibly even less. When you meet women who are wives, you know in an instant. There's an aura they have. It's like a fragrance. There's a serene disposition that they bring. They bring peace. When you look at the lists we just went through, and when you consider what men generally want for relationships in the long term is peace, what you find is that list is simply a nagging shotgun. In other words, from the moment that relationship begins, all he will receive will be nags, complaints, and there will be war. There will be no peace. Now let's aggregate everything and let me bring today's session to a close. Ladies, you may have watched the 2 sessions and you might be thinking like I did, and like most men think, why would they want such a long list? Can I say something that is, I believe to be true? If I were to line up 9 women, I believe about 8 out of 9 will have a similar list. By similar, I mean in terms of the quantity of things needed and expected. Those women are not exceptions to the rule. They are part of the rule. Most women, most modern women, were never raised to understand men. They were raised without fathers in the house. They were raised by women who expected so much. They were raised to believe that they are simply God's gift to the world and to men, and that they can have a list of expectations and standards and preferences and entitlements, and they're not supposed to think about what they can do for a man. The first time these women play with men is during foreplay. Now, I have said before that if your first play with a man is foreplay, you will always find that your understanding of a man will always be limited. They don't understand the biology of a man's ego, his emotions, his fears, his struggles. And so therefore, all they come to the table with is expectations. Now here is the issue. You can have whatever standards you have, you choose. You can have whatever preferences you wish. You can have whatever expectations you desire. You have to understand that in the marketplace, a transaction only takes place when you have a willing buyer and a willing seller agree or come to terms on what is considered to be a fair exchange. I talk about the value exchange proposition, and the key question for women is a simple one. Your price is determined by your lists. Your value is determined by how he sees and what he perceives you to be. If there is a discrepancy between both, there will be no sale, there will be no transaction, there will be no relationship. So one of the most important questions women should be asking is what I'm asking for consistent with what I am given and who I am? We attract who we are. Now here is perhaps a sad reality. I talk about 3 concepts: isogamy, hypergamy, and hypogamy. Women generally date across social hierarchies, socioeconomic hierarchies, and upwards, hypergamy. They want men who are just in the same level as they are, or better preferably. Men, on the other hand, date across, if needed, and below. We don't mind being the breadwinners and being the protector provider. Women, on the other hand, want equals or people better than they are. So what you see is a woman's economic intrinsic value, which is what most women lead with. My success, my accomplishments, my education, they use that as a criteria for all of their long list of standards and requirements. Men don't care about your economic intrinsic value. They care more about what they see. So from a man's perspective, a man is simply looking at the women on the panel and simply saying, what is the value on a sexual marketplace perspective? Number 1. Number 2, if he wants to have children, he says, what is your reproductive fertility value? And if he's going to be with you, considering he wants you and wants to have children, he asks, what is your non-sexual marketplace value? The aggregate of all of those 3, aggregated as the man chooses, will determine whether he sees your value at a level below or above your price. In investing, one of the things I teach is, it's a simple concept. You always want to buy something when the value exceeds the price. It's not what you buy that matters, it's the price you pay. A good investment and good investing is not a function of buying good assets. On the other hand, it is a function of buying things well. I can walk into Mayfair and I can see a property, a 4-story Georgian townhouse, that is retailing for 20 million. It is a great property, it is in a great location, it is in a great city, and in a great country. It's a good asset, but it could be a poor investment if I pay 20 million. On the other hand, if I waited, and perhaps the best analogy would be 2006, 2009, in 2006-07, property markets were hot, interest rates were relatively in a stable position prior to the recession or prior to the economic financial crash. By 2009, property values started to drop, interest rates were dropped, and what we found is properties that were maybe worth about 20 million in 2007. By 2010, 9, 10, 11, you could get those properties at 40% of a discount. The properties had fallen below their intrinsic value. In 2007, they were above their intrinsic value. So same property, if I had waited and not purchased for 20 million in 2007 and I waited to 2009, 10, I may have purchased the same property worth 20 million for 10 million. Same property, one is a better investment compared to the other. Same good assets, but it's the price you pay that matters. So the key part of investing and the way men think as cost-benefit calculators is we're looking for value that is commensurate with the price we pay, but ideally value that exceeds the price paid. We generally include a margin of safety, a margin of error, that we might make a mistake. I bring all of that concept into dating and those women. We meet you, narratives, numbers, a story, and the numbers. I look at your value, SMV, there's a score, RFV, there is a score, and SMV, there is a score. Those are just numbers. But there is a story behind you. And then I start to associate all of those stories. For example, the second video, the lady said she had been single for 8 years. Now let's play that backwards. Let's assume she's 32. If she's been single for 8 years, then it means she's been single since she was 24. Now, the video was produced 6 years ago. Now, legend has it that she's still single and unmarried. So, if she was 32 at the point of the video, now she's in a 38, 39 phase, and she's still single. Dating equals sex for men. So if she's been single and she's been trying to date, no doubt she's been running up her body count, and therefore reducing her ability to pair bond with a man, which generally takes place when you exceed a certain number of sexual partners. The ability to pair bond with a man increases. Now that is a narrative. There's also issues with potential traumas and hard experiences, negative experiences with men and relationships. We combine the numbers and we combine the narratives. Now, the margin of safety is where a man simply says, well, I think she's a score across on an aggregated score of a 7. And he simply says, well, her price has to be roughly a 5 to ensure I have a 25% or a 20% margin of safety. So 7 is the aggregated score across the 3 criteria. Her price is 5. That is a fair exchange because the man is simply saying, well, my 7 could be wrong based on the narratives. So 5 is a fair exchange. If I get 7 as value, I'm happy. If I get 5, fair exchange. Most women will never find happiness because they'll rather be right. They'll rather hold on to their lists and self-sabotage themselves rather than simply say, that list may have been fine at 24. When I was young, attractive, I had the world ahead of me and I could make demands. But as you approach 30 and as you exceed 30 and you approach 40, you need humility. You need some level of gratitude that you are still alive and gratitude to just have someone in your life who is a good person. Most women would rather be right than happy. And so what you tend to find It's a doubling down on standards. The same woman will simply say, well, I'd rather be single than compromise. Well, compromise is the new word, is the new buzzword amongst modern women. And all it simply means is I would rather be on my own and understand what a man needs and understand what a man can offer and find the best quality man and pair bond with and go into the sunset and have a great life. Now, let's park everything I've shared so far. Maybe you disagree with me, maybe you agree. In any case, I'd love to hear that. But let me say the following, because I think this is very, very important. In life, we do not get what we deserve. In life, we do not get what we sow. In life, we do not always get what we wish or want. Most of the time, we only get what we have the courage to ask for and what we're willing to negotiate on. So if you are a woman, great, you have a list. But come in good faith. Come peaceably. Come to the table recognizing the value exchange and proposition and be willing to negotiate. Don't be too rigid. Some of those items on the list are not necessary. And I mean absolutely unnecessary. It's your list. You can make up whatever you wish. But here is perhaps one of the things I'll leave you with as I close. Let it not be said that perhaps you experience hell on earth because at some point in your life, you ran into the person that you could have been. And that person you could have been stared at you in the face and simply said, all of those lists were unnecessary. Most men are generally good. Most men are quite happy to work with a woman to have a meaningful, significant relationship. There are 2.4 million more women in the UK than there are men. In England and Wales alone, 1.25 more million women than there are men. In Scotland, about 1.21 or 1.22 million. The number in Northern Ireland, because it's a much smaller population, is in the hundreds of thousands, so quite insignificant. The key part is, if all women of marriageable age in the UK wanted to get married to men in the UK of marriageable age, there will be 2.4 more women who are unmarried or who will remain unmarried and alone. So when you then compound the numbers with the lists, which is the narrative and the stories and the standards and expectations, what you simply do is you increase the number of women who will fail in meeting something that should come natural. As I close with today's session, let me encourage you. The key part of the whole interaction today was not to judge those women and go through what they had on their lists and say one was right or wrong. These are things that they say they want. We are supposed to live life in such a way that we understand good examples that we can emulate and examples that we should avoid. Success leaves behind clues and failure leaves behind tracks. Choose a pathway that enables you to go from where you are to where you want to be. If you find that you are one of those examples of failure, your responsibility is to invest the life you led into younger people to stop them from following the wide path. Narrow is the way that leads to light, and wide is the path that leads to destruction. I hope this has been useful.